Welcome to Behind the Muscle podcast. Today's guest is an IFBB WPD pro. Today's guest is Emily Schubert. Emily, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to talk bodybuilding this morning.
There we go. For sure. We're gonna get into all things bodybuilding. The first question I would like to know, Emily, is who are a few of your favorite bodybuilders of all time?
Yeah, so I have to say right off the bat, Dana Lynn Bailey is my all-time favorite inspiration, motivation. I would say I got into the sport mainly watching her and her husband on their YouTube channel, and that's really what got me into kind of the bigger side of the women's divisions, and wanting to put on a serious amount of muscle and not being scared to. So watching her, get ready for her shows, and she has a couple prep series on there that I would watch, and you watch her struggle with the mental side of things and the emotional side of things, and that was really what kind of sparked my interest in wanting to see if I could do the same thing. So she's probably my number one biggest inspiration as far as competitors go.
Cool. Now, what was it? I absolutely admire DLB as well. But for you specifically, I know you said you kind of found her through kind of the YouTube channel and stuff, but what was it specifically? Obviously, she has a very dynamic and charismatic personality, and she's somebody you just want to walk up to and give her a hug because she seems so down to earth and cool. But what was it specifically for you, Emily, that kind of attracted you to DLB, and then kind of just the whole physique thing? What was really the thing that really sucked you in or pulled you in, if I might ask that?
One, her training style. She goes hard and heavy. It's a lot of drop sets, a lot of supersets, fast pace. And I think coming from my athletic background, I like that style of training, a little bit higher intensity, a little bit more cardio stuff worked in. So that's where the giant sets and the drop sets and all that come in. That's kind of how I like to train and how I prefer to train. And then on top of that, she was pretty much the beginning of the women's physique division. So she was the frontier that kind of opened up this new era of, not quite women's bodybuilding, but now we're in this middle ground where you're still building muscle mass and density, but you're staying really feminine, really soft, and kind of presenting it that way too. So I liked how she came in and kind of, opened to this new territory, I guess, for women to come in and give us an area where we can kind of, compete and express ourselves in the way we want to.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. Love it. Okay. So why don't you let us know, Emily, at what age you started lifting weights, and then why did you start lifting weights at that specific age?
Yeah, so I've been an athlete my entire life. My mom put me in dance classes super early. It went from dance to gymnastics. And then once I got into middle school, the idea of school sports came into play. And I was, very open to making friends, and I wanted to be part of something. So I wouldn't say ditched gymnastics, but my mom gave me the choice, one or the other. And that's when I got into track. And that's where I saw my first weight room. That was middle school. I was probably 8th or 9th grade. I think my track coaches took us in during the summer and took a small group of us that wanted to get some extra work in and learn. So, me being very determined, I was like, let's go, let's do this. So that got me in probably at I want to say 14 or 15. And that was the very beginning of lifting. It wasn't anything very detailed. It was more so just learning proper squat form, step ups, lunging, the basics of basic. And then from track, I did that through college, and that's when we got a little bit more detailed. And that's when I learned hypertrophy and learning how to really tailor a training and a lifting program to get you desired results. I think that was kind of, I wouldn't say missing from the high school era, but it wasn't as detailed and it wasn't as in depth as my track coaches in college took it. And I went to Slippery Rock University here in Pennsylvania. And our track program was amazing. Our coaches were very, very passionate about it. And that's really what kind of started my whole discipline, being very regimented, very routine based. So that's kind of where I got my footing for bodybuilding.
Love that. Okay. Now I want to talk a little bit more about your upbringing, your childhood. So talk a little bit, Emily, if you don't mind, like, where did you actually grow up? Any siblings? And then, you already mentioned sports like the dance, gymnastics, and track. Just talk about what did sports kind of do for you, especially once you started getting into like the organized team sports in middle school and in high school. Like, do you feel like sports really like maybe helped you get out of your shell, or how did it kind of help you develop as a young person or as a teenager, so to speak? So where did you grow up? Any siblings? Just talk about your childhood a little bit, please.
Yeah. So I'm born and raised in Pittsburgh. I grew up just outside of the city. My mom and dad are your typical Midwestern family. They both worked. They're still married, still together. So that was a really cool kind of learning, what a relationship and the dynamics of that play into it. A lot of my friends didn't have that growing up. So I'm very fortunate to have a good, strong relationship, as an example. I have an older brother and an older sister. So I'm the baby by 4 years. My sister's 6 years older. My brother's 4 years older than me. And my sister was involved in dance, but she is 100% more the intellectual side of life. She's now a lawyer in DC. So, as hard as I go in the gym, she goes hard in the books and studying. So she's very, very successful with what she does. My brother was an athlete as well. He did hockey and volleyball and soccer. So I think growing up, being lugged and dragged around to all of his practices and games and whatnot, it was me running around the field on the side, playing and tumbling and rolling down the hill. And that's kind of when, my parents knew, okay, we need to get her involved in something because she has a lot of energy. So that's kind of where she let me get into gymnastics. She was a little bit leery at first, but, I was doing all these flips and kicks around the house. And she's like, let's take this out of where we can break stuff. So that's kind of like when I was young, sports was my outlet to be active and release all the energy that I had built up. And I think it kind of transitioned as I got older into middle school and high school as a social aspect. So it was where I made friends and we all had something in common. School, obviously you have to do it growing up because, you have to learn. But for me, it was the after school activities that were my favorite part of the day. That was my safe area. That was my fun time. I think in college is when I really realized that it was the stress relief for me. I was always, over eager to do extra practices and extra this and extra that. And it carried all the way through college to the point where I think that's where my discipline was really ingrained in myself. Being in a collegiate sport, we had a very strict schedule of early practices and, community service hours and meets on the weekends. And we even had to do study hours. So throughout the week, we had to clock in and make sure that we're logging all these hours as a student athlete. So that was really cool, learning time management and, sports are fun, but you have to learn how to balance everything else with it. So I think that's what taught me how to make a schedule and hold to it and stay, on top of things. So yeah, sports I wouldn't say sports, but like being physically active has always been part of my life. It's always what I've known. It's always been I'm more the brawn than the brains, I'd say.
Very cool. Okay. Now I want to ask you said that you kind of grew up in and I did, so I did myself. So I'm just going to preface that, but you said you kind of grew up in like a more of a traditional home. Your parents are, still married to this day and as are mine and stuff. And, did, at any point, did you kind of like rebel, or have you, now that you're, you know, an adult, and I saw that you just recently turned 30. So you put it on Instagram, so I can put that out there. But at some point, either when you were younger or now that you're an adult and you've had some life experiences, you've lived life and you have a very unique, you know, experience just within being a professional bodybuilder as a woman. You know, did you ever rebel against that, or have you kind of like looked back on kind of like that traditional upbringing? Yes, being thankful for it, but just maybe saying like, that's just not for me. Like, talk about that if so.
Yeah. So growing up, my parents were, I wouldn't say they were very strict. But it was kind of like a no nonsense household. You know, we kind of had a curfew. You were supposed to be back at this certain time. You know, anything we wanted to do or go out to do, we had to ask for permission. In high school, I really didn't delve into partying or drinking. For me, it was athletics. You know, I was a little track nerd, as I like to say. You know, the weekends were spent going to meets or practices. Even in the summers, I was doing extra practices. I would do cross country in the off season to stay in shape. So it really, I never really was distracted by anything. I would say until my freshman year of college was when my eyes were open to the real world. You know, not being at home with mom and dad anymore, kind of having a little bit more freedom. And that's where I, you know, discovered alcohol and my freshman year, you know, trying to be cool and fit in. And, you know, I befriended a lot of older students at the time, and, you know, they're going out to parties on the weekends. And I think that was my first kind of lesson, and understanding, like, you know, do you want this lifestyle? Or do you want something that's going to be obviously more work and more effort, but you're going to get so much more self-satisfaction from it? And I think that freshman year was kind of my time of rebellion, and I realized, like, this isn't the route I want to take. So I, you know, reined it in, and I think the summer going into my sophomore year of college, I was up at school working a job, and my male friends were living right next door to me. And that's when they took me under their wings and said, you know, you should eat this way. This is how you should train. You know, we're doing this workout after work tomorrow. If you want to join, come in. And that's where I really, really got into the strict and disciplined lifestyle that I kind of live today. I think they really hardened me, not only physically, but also mentally. So I would say that was kind of my biggest lesson in life.
Okay, cool. Now, I got to ask you, because I'm very curious, and the people that are watching and listening are probably curious too. You've mentioned track. What did you run? Were you a field person? Like, talk about what events you actually did in high school and also in college, because I'm curious.
Yeah, so when I started track, instantly I wanted to do hurdles and jumping, because in my mind, for some reason, I thought they were like the most difficult. So of course I got into that, and then I realized, you know, I'm not the tallest with the longest legs, so hurdles probably isn't for me. I stayed with jumping, so I did long jump, triple jump, high jump, and once I was able to, our school offered pole vault, and that's when I kind of fell in love. And I had a really awesome pole vault coach in high school. Mr. Wicks, Coach Wicks, he was kind of one of the first people I leaned on as like a parental role in my life. And I think that's what kind of started my relationship with having a coach figure in my life. Someone stable, someone who can teach me how to handle not only the athletics, but also the side of life that kind of comes with it, dealing with both aspects of the mental and emotional side of things. I did pole vault. I specialized in pole vault into college. It was awesome. I mean, I loved my college experience. For someone who really enjoyed athletics, you go there and it's kind of like a job. Whereas you're having 6 a.m. practices before class, then you go to class and you have 4 p.m. practice after that, and then you have a lifting room session, and then you have to clock in your school hours. So it was a lot of fun, and it gave me a really cool avenue to kind of explore the side of, what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Do I want to try to pursue something with athletics, or, is it kind of going to be the end of the road and that's going to be that? And I think choosing to do college sports really kind of pointed my life in this direction.
So since you were not necessarily the bookworm, what did you actually study then in college?
So I was very, very studious in high school. I took so many AP classes. I went up to AP Calc and European history, and I kind of took a step back and I was like, why am I doing all of this if I don't enjoy it? I don't need to be taking these accelerated courses, and I'm not really wanting to do anything super math related or science related. So going into college, I really enjoyed, my high school had a TV production course. So I was part of the morning announcements, and I did a lot of the back work, meaning like I wasn't on camera a lot. So it was more of the production side of things. And that was really the only thing in school that I enjoyed, the only class I really wanted to go to. So I was like, this is it. This is what I'm going to pursue in life. So I did that in college. I went and got an emerging technology and multimedia with a minor in graphic design at Slippery Rock. And unfortunately, after my first 2.5 years of that, I realized I don't know if I want to do this for the rest of my life. And at that point, you're 19 or 20 and you just want to get out of school and move on with your life. And so I did. I finished my degree there, and I have, technically it's a communication degree. So I can go a lot of different ways with it. Journalism, PR, production, editing. So I do have that background with me. Obviously I haven't really been in that field for quite a few years. But I like to think that I can kind of spin it a lot of different ways. Yeah. So it's a pretty wide open kind of a degree.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think even now, because social media, especially within the fitness bodybuilding world, is so huge, and it's just going to continue to grow and be in our lives forever. I think you could probably even go the route of, maybe taking some like social media specific classes and add on to that degree as well, right? In the future, if you wanted.
100%. Yeah, it's funny because social media we had Facebook, but Instagram was really just starting while I was in college. And I to this day, I remember like waking up and being like, today, I'm going to make an Instagram today and make my first post. And it was so stupid, in college, you have really nothing going on. So you're just posting, selfies and whatnot. But yeah, of course, social media has really changed our day-to-day life. So as much as I love, the sport of bodybuilding for the athletic side of it, learning how to market yourself has been kind of really nice to have that background with myself of how to kind of show different sides of yourself and not only just the side of you being an athlete, but now I'm trying to show what I'm like as a personality, because obviously, we all kind of gravitate towards people that we can relate to. So learning how to use social media to your benefit is being more and more popular in the sport these days.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. So once you graduated from college, Emily, where did life kind of take you? Talk a little bit about those first few years after college, and then if that kind of like ties into you beginning to kind of get into bodybuilding and stuff, just start leading us in that direction if you don't mind.
Yeah. So I graduated, moved back home. Obviously my first thing when I walked in the door, I was like, I need to find a gym. So I went to the local LA Fitness. The guy that was working the front desk took me on a tour, and he kind of mentioned something about your jobs or what. And I was like, hey, this is it. My mom's telling me I need to get a job. Let's do it. Might as well be in a gym where I feel comfortable and I don't mind being there. So I actually joined. I started my first like real world job after college. I was in training sales for PT. So it was split shifts, over 40 hours a week. I was in the gym all day, every day, which I really didn't mind. But it was a sales job, and it was learning how to use your words and coerce certain things to go in your favor. And I was good at it. But I think I realized after a little bit that this isn't what I wanted to be doing. Nothing against the company, but the programming and the way it was set up, I didn't feel comfortable selling it to people. So I left there, then I went to a GNC. So I was constantly working in kind of fitness related jobs. So I was at GNC, then I was another trainer. I got my training certification. I went back to LA Fitness. I worked there as a trainer. Then I went from there to Anytime Fitness to just a bunch of different locations around Pittsburgh, training clients in person. That kind of got me my experience as far as, I wouldn't say coaching, but learning how to tailor a workout program and a nutrition program for people of different levels. And along that time, that's when I met my first coach in 2015, I think 15 or 16. I did my first NPC show. I did Slippery Rocks Club bodybuilding show my senior year. And I didn't have a coach. It was kind of me just winging it. But it exposed me to the world of bodybuilding. And that's when I realized, I want to do it again. I got my first coach was a fellow member at LA Fitness. And it wasn't a bad experience, but I knew at the end of the first year with him, I wanted someone a little bit more experienced and more detailed. And that's when I met my now a day coach, Derek Natcher with Loud Performance Training. So I got with him, and that's really where things took off as far as competing and really pursuing bodybuilding.
Excellent. Okay. Now I got to ask you before we kind of spend the rest of the time talking mostly bodybuilding. I want to ask you, when you were kind of doing the personal training and, just working with all kinds of different populations, especially because I've been a personal trainer at an Anytime Fitness. And, once you've been a trainer at, kind of like a corporate gym or a global gym, it's kind of all the same, right? It's maybe packaged differently, but it's basically the same. So I can relate. And so the question I have is, being a lifelong athlete and then being a college athlete, and I'm assuming you had probably pretty high expectations for yourself, and there's individual goals and team goals. And it's just especially because I also played a college sport, football. It's just different. So then for me, even up to this point, still to this day, it's really hard for me to relate to quote unquote normal people that are just coming in. They kind of know what they want. They kind of don't. They want to lose a few pounds. And I just can't relate. Like, I own a gym, I train people. So I force myself to try to kind of relate, but I just don't get it because I've never been out of shape. I'm a lifelong athlete, compete in bodybuilding. So does that kind of sound familiar in terms of you? Did you kind of struggle with, kind of like the quote unquote normal people, or were you able to relate with them well? Like, talk about that, because I think that's something important if somebody's going to be a coach or a trainer or involved in the fitness industry.
Yeah. So when I started, obviously it wasn't as a coaching position as a lot of people today with social media. You can kind of create yourself to be a coach right off the bat. But for me, when I started, it was a personal trainer, meaning people right off the street, they come into LA Fitness, obviously they want to change how they look or how they feel. So you get a lot of people that, one, don't know how to use a gym. And you get a lot of people that have failed, meaning they've tried this, it's not working, they don't know what else to do. So now they're coming for help. And my biggest thing when I was a trainer at LA Fitness was, how do I get these people to not only come see me, but want to come see me? So my biggest thing was not forcing them to do the way I work out and the way I train, was how can I make this fun and enjoyable for them so that they're getting the physical activity they need and maybe the mental release that they need, but it's not a chore. It's not, there's something that they're dreading all day long. So my biggest thing was not only being a trainer and teaching them proper form and execution and whatnot, but also just kind of learning a little bit about them, because your approach to every client that you have is different. Some people need that harder, kind of colder, personality to say, I need 2 more reps. Come on, let's go. You're being, you're being weak. This isn't you. But that doesn't work for everyone. Some people might need a little bit softer of an approach. And I think learning with different age groups was really important too. It's pretty easy to kind of train someone your own age or younger, but now you're working in people that have limitations or certain health factors that need to be taken into account. So I think that also, when you're getting into wanting to be a coach or a personal trainer is understanding your clientele base. So if you want to be, a bodybuilding coach, you're going to have a lot of people around the same age, I'd say. Maybe some outliers here and there. But if you're a personal trainer, now you're taking in the general public, meaning you could have kids, you could have, people working 9-to-5 jobs, you could have retired people that might have a lot of health factors or limitation injuries, things that they have to work around. So I think that needs to be understood too, before kind of delving into the fitness field is learning and realizing where you want to play your role.
Excellent. Okay, Emily, let's fully dive into bodybuilding talk. Now, you kind of mentioned your first show. Now, I want to kind of pick things up where you connected with your current coach, Derek. Okay. Now, I want to ask you, because you have him on your Instagram bio as your coach. I never heard of him. I went and checked out his Instagram and stuff. Now, the first question I have about Derek is, how did you kind of come across him? Because it's not Matt Jansen or Chris Aceto or somebody like that. So how did you come across Derek? Why did you select him as your second coach? And then what has it been? Like working with him? Why have you continued to work with him, through the NPC and now as a professional athlete?
Yeah. So I was backstage at the Pittsburgh show with my last coach. And he wasn't there. I actually had a friend from school that was involved in the show. He was helping me backstage and he kind of understood my frustration of having a coach that wasn't really fully there. And he said, I know this guy, he's awesome at what he does. He's actually from Pittsburgh. He's here. I think you should meet him. So we were backstage. Derek had, I think 4, maybe 5 people in the show. And that's when I was introduced to him. And right off the bat, I knew this guy was serious about what he did. He was very personable, very easy to talk to. And for me, being very introverted and shy, I kind of felt an energy connection with him. And I knew, this could be a good fit. So I did my research. I went back and, crept on his Instagram and looked at a bunch of his posts and whatnot. And it was all transformations. And it wasn't just a little like, 2 months change here. It was all of these clients of his that made these drastic physical transformations. And I knew he knew what he was doing. So right off the bat, I contacted him and said, I think I want to join your team. We got started at the end of 2017 with an off season. So he, instantly said, I think we should do the pit again. We'll have you come back, kind of as redemption and show better face on that stage. So we did our first off season going into 2018. And that was our first season competing together, was the pit championships.
Okay. So how did you do at the Pittsburgh Championships with Derek that first go around?
Yeah. So our first year competing together, he turned me pro. So we did the pit championships for women's physique and women's bodybuilding at that time. They let me join in right away. I think that was when they were trying to build up the women's bodybuilding divisions. So we did that. I took the overall, which was awesome. That was the coolest, experience that I had of bodybuilding up to that date. 2 weeks later, we went down to South Carolina to do my first national show, which was Junior USA's. Going into that show, my mindset was just, I want to see where I stack up against, people that have been doing this for years. And I remember to this day, we were in the car and Derek was like, I think you could win this. And I'm like, you're crazy. There's no way. Because I wasn't in bodybuilding for very long. This is my first national show. It's your eyes are open to now not only just people from Pittsburgh, but now people from all over the country, and people that have been doing it way longer than you with a lot more experience. So going into that show, I ended up taking the overall there, which turned me pro. It was kind of like a whirlwind. Being thrown into this sport and then all of a sudden you're at the next level already. But I knew we had something going. So that's why I stayed with Derek. And to this day, I have no regrets. He is an amazing coach. I couldn't say more enough good things about him. He's actually virtual for me. So I'm up in Pennsylvania. He lives down in Florida. So all of our communication is technology, whether it be video, email, text message. We're constantly in touch. So it never feels like he is unavailable to me. Being with him almost 5 years now, we've created quite a relationship, whereas he understands the way I need to be coached. And he's learning my body too. So the more time we spend together, he understands how my body handles certain things. So he's, hands down, he's been my ride or die for bodybuilding these past couple of years. I have no kind of interest in swapping out coaches because what we've been doing has been working. So my goal is not only for me, hopefully, to have success in the sport, but to get him noticed too. He does, his coaching has exploded. He actually has, I think, 5 or 6, maybe more coaches under him now. So his Team Loud Performance, when I first started with him, it was just him and I think maybe one other coach, kind of a part-time coach. And now it's an entire team. So he has, expanded not only with competitors, but also with lifestyle. So he's really kind of covering all of the bases as far as teaching people how to properly, live a healthy lifestyle. He prioritizes health over everything, which I like. Obviously there is life after bodybuilding, so you have to be smart and do things, in a way that you're not putting yourself at risk for the future, which I really like about him as a coach. And I've really no bad things to say about him.
Yeah. Well, even if you did, you probably wouldn't on a podcast like this, would you?
No, I would say the only thing with him is his compliments are very, very far and few. So when you do get them, they're like 100% real, authentic. And we make jokes that you have to screenshot it because they're hard to come by.
Yeah. Well, that's cool. I think there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's much needed in today's day and age. Now, I think again, on your Instagram bio, I saw that you are a coach then underneath your coach. Is that correct?
So I'm actually not under him as far as being on the Loud team. I would say I am a posing coach as far as any Loud athlete out there. My coach kind of helps, shimmy them my way and filter them through me. But I have kind of created myself as I wouldn't say a bodybuilding coach because I really don't prep athletes for competitions. But I prefer more the lifestyle side of things. I have kind of, I would say, market myself as a posing coach, just because that is the side that I prefer most and enjoy most out of bodybuilding. Not anything against other prep coaches, but it's just not for me, especially as I'm trying to compete myself. I know kind of my limitations, and and I need I need some time to myself. I can't be available 100% of the time. So I know coaching isn't for me. But I really enjoy the posing side of things. I work with people online and in person for posing. I work with males and females. So I open it up from women's physique all the way up into open bodybuilding, with classic and women's physique as well. I haven't delved into bikini or wellness posing, learning that side of things, just because it's not my cup of tea. There's plenty of women out there and men out there that are fantastic at that, and I know that's not me. So I stick with that side of posing. As far as coaching goes, lifestyle coaching, I have done in-person training still. It's kind of more of like like the entrepreneur side of things. So I'm not really working with a gym per se, but my local gym allows us to bring clients there. So when I'm not in prep mode, I will bring on some in-person clients there. I've also worked with the nutrition side of things. So helping coach people how to properly eat. So those are kind of my rounds of my coaching services there.
Now, what is it, Emily, about posing that you, appreciate or enjoy so much? Because especially I think on the men's side of things, posing is just kind of something you have to do at most competitions. It's not even really judged anymore. So why posing? Why do you kind of like to teach that?
I think realizing that when you do get to the higher levels, meaning like natural level and up, posing really comes into play, meaning you can't kind of just get by with having a good physique anymore, because at those levels, everyone looks good. We're all kind of I wouldn't say the elite level, but you get to the point where people know what they're doing. They know how to train, they know how to put on muscle, and now becomes the area of how do I vary from the other competitors on stage, and that's going to be posing and presentation. And I think it's an area that kind of gets neglected a lot, especially in today's age of bodybuilding. There's so many other things that people focus on besides their posing and presentation. So I like helping other competitors kind of learn their body, because I think there's a huge learning curve. Not only how to do the mandatories, the basic posing, but then now we're learning our own individual bodies and how can I present this in the best light possible for my strengths and to kind of hide the weaknesses. So that's the side of bodybuilding that I find most challenging and fun. I never used to really be into posing. I would do it and learn it just because you had to. I think when I got to the pro level is when I really found a passion for it. And to this day, it's my favorite area of it. When I'm working with posing clients, it doesn't feel like work anymore. It's kind of just, it's what you want to do in life, and you just end up getting paid for it, which is really cool.
Yeah. Amen to that for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're going to get back into like your competitive bodybuilding talk. And so I want to ask you, Emily, in regards to when was it when you first kind of like had like a conscious thought about turning pro as a bodybuilder? Was it kind of from the get-go? Was it, when you're going to the junior USAs and your coach said, hey, I think you could, win the whole thing? Was it that overall at the Pittsburgh Championships? Like, when did you start consciously thinking about, man, I would like to be a pro bodybuilder?
So in my mind, I've always had the idea that if I'm going to do something, I want to be good at it. I'm not just going to do it to participate. And that's been since I was little, ever since I would say I'm a super competitive person. And that was through gymnastics, that was through track, and now with bodybuilding. I think when I really got into, with my first coach, I knew I could do better than I was doing with my work ethic, with my ability to, eat the way I should be eating and train the way I should be training. And it wasn't really showing on stage. And that's when I switched coaches and understood, okay, I need someone who is going to get me to where I want to go. And I think when I started with Derek Natcher currently, his mindset and his kind of really close focus on detail, I really liked. And I think our first season, when I did end up going pro, you know, I was like, this could turn into something if I stay focused, if I keep doing what I'm doing. You know, this could go somewhere. And I think that's when I realized, like, you know, buckle down, stay focused, stay on the route, because it's gonna turn into something.
Okay. Now, when was it? Okay, so after you did your first competition, did your first coach, did some judges, did somebody come up to you and say, "Hey, Emily, you've really got some potential for this," or did you kind of just feel like when you examined your physique in the mirror, you're like, I think to yourself, Emily, you've got some potential? Like, talk about that, because a lot of times, especially when I have all these conversations with bodybuilders, a lot of times we don't see our own potential, and that can be in bodybuilding or in business or any aspect of life. A lot of times we need a coach, we need a family member, we need a friend, we need somebody from the outside to kind of confirm what's already inside, or to kind of give us a little push in the direction maybe we're meant to go. So where did that come from for you?
I would say, I remember it was like, maybe 5 days before my national show in 2018. And I remember Derek put a picture of me. It was like a morning check-in picture where you're like flat, depleted, and like, you don't, like, I looked at that picture and I was like, I have no muscle. Like, where did it all go? But he put it up on his story, and, you know, he was like, this amount of conditioning, it's out of this world. It's nuts, like crazy. And I'm thinking, like, I look like crap right now. Like, what are you talking about? And I think that was kind of the moment where having this coach who obviously knows what he's talking about, he knows what he's looking at, he's seen it, he's had the experience of it. So for him to look at a picture where I think I look my worst, and him, like, you know, putting it up on this, like, almost like a pedestal, like, look at this amount of conditioning, this is what we want. I think that was the moment that I was like, holy shit, like, maybe I could be good at this. Maybe there's something there. But to this day, you can ask a lot of, you know, my friends and you know, members of my gym and whatnot, like, I still don't think I'm good. I still don't think I'm at the elite level. And every time I say that, you know, my friends are like, oh, but Emily, you've made it to Olympia. Like, you've made it. And to me, I'm like, that's not good enough. Like, there's so many other things I still want to accomplish and prove. So I think having that kind of a mindset too, as an athlete, especially as a pro athlete, like, you're never done, if that makes sense. You might have some confidence knowing that you're at the level that you need to be at. You know, you're competing against the best of the best. And obviously I'm not like delusional enough to not understand that. But I do understand that, like, even if you're the 1%, the top, there's always room to improve. So I think having that kind of a mindset too gives me a little bit of an edge to it. I think a lot of pros earn that ranking, and then they think, like, okay, I can coast by, you know, the work has been done, and I can obviously I'm at an elite level, and I think that's kind of where the mistakes happen, and when the pressure of the sport tends to get to people.
Excellent. Okay, now you turned pro in 2018, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so walk us through then, because I know you just mentioned, and I knew this from your Instagram, that you've won a pro show, you stepped on the Olympia stage or qualified for the Olympia. So from 2018, when you turned pro, walk us through kind of the rest of your competition history up to this point, Emily, please.
Yeah. So 2019 was my pro debut year. I've always given kind of the reins of our plans to Derek. And that year he said, you know, I want to do 3 pro shows right off the bat. So it was in the summer of 2019. We did the San Jose Pro. So I flew out to California alone. I was, I think, 26 at the time. So that was my first trip traveling solo. Super scary, but super fun. I went straight from San Jose, which I think I placed 10th. out of like 20 girls. So not bad, kind of middle of the pack, which was cool because I didn't get like completely washed out for my pro debut, which was good. I flew straight from there to Chicago. So I did the Chicago Pro, which was still in Chicago at the time. And that show was my best placing. I placed 7th. So I think that was kind of the like, oh my gosh, maybe I could actually not be, a crappy pro and I could actually go somewhere with it. Very cool feeling. My sister was at that show. I had a couple friends from Pittsburgh were at that show. So that was a really cool experience. Then I went straight from Chicago up to Vancouver. So these shows were 3 weeks back to back to back. So I was on the road for 3 weeks, traveling from city to city. By the time we got to Vancouver for that show, I think my body was kind of toasted from peaking and depleting it, twice already. So we did the Vancouver, wasn't my best showing. We knew the season needed to wrap up at that point. And all of my feedback was really just size. So we went into an off season, then going into the year 2020, when the world kind of blew up. We had planned on doing I think it was the Chicago Pro. And it was supposed to be in the summer again, but with everything happening, the show kept being pushed back. So it ended up being in October. So that was my 4th pro show, was the Chicago Pro. It was actually down in Atlanta that year. I placed 12th. It was a big turnout. I think there was over 30 girls. And to be honest, I was a little disappointed because I was bringing my best package to date, and it didn't stack up against the higher level of competitors there. So I told Derek, I want to do another one. I don't want to shut it down just yet. So we planned on doing 2 more. We did the Atlantic Coast, which was, I think, 6 weeks after that, down in Florida. And then we were going to do the Rising Phoenix, which is out in Arizona, the following week. So I flew down to Florida that year in 2020, went on stage at the Atlantic Coast, ended up winning that show, which was totally out of nowhere. Very surprised at myself and shocked. So that qualified me for the 2021 Olympia. We were actually going to take that year off. But of course, Derek and I both agreed, if you qualify for the Olympia, there's no way you're turning that down. So we actually wrapped it up. We pulled out of the Rising Phoenix to focus on going into an off season right away and to get on stage for the 2021 Olympia. So then moving on into 2021, the Olympia was our first show of the year. Unfortunately, about a month out of it, I tweaked my knee. It ended up being a sort of a tear in my meniscus, which it put a damper on things, because that was really when we were going to start like our final push to stage. And obviously we had to kind of change, the approach now. So I brought about an 80% package to the Olympia. It wasn't, I would say that was the first time I walked on stage, like completely not confident. Like not in the least, because I knew it wasn't my best. And to walk onto the biggest stage in the sport, not at your best, it's like a dog with its tail between its legs. It wasn't a good feeling. It was an amazing experience. I'm very thankful and I feel very blessed to be there. I think it's an opportunity that a lot of athletes don't get. So I'm very, very thankful for that. But at the same time, it kept me hungry, knowing that I want to come back and show my best. So we actually did 2 more shows after the Olympia in 2021. We did the Legion Sports Fest, which is over on the West Coast. Very cool show. That was my first time participating in that. And it was a very, very well put on event. I think I placed 3rd there behind 2 other Olympians, Natalia and Evie Rain, which is like, I was like stargirl moment, like fangirl moment, because, these women are girls that I've looked up to, since I started the sport. And then a couple weeks later, I did the Atlantic Coast again, placing 4th. So it turned out to be a good season. I brought my best to that stage at the Atlantic Coast, and Derek learned obviously a lot about my body and kind of moving forward what approach that he needs or things that he needs to tweak. So it wasn't a loss. It wasn't a bad season, even with that little injury hiccup. I would say in this sport, there's really no bad showings, unless obviously like you cheat your diet or, you don't work hard or something like that. But as long as you're working and doing what you need to be doing on a daily basis, like you're learning about yourself, and hopefully moving forward, the things that happened last year, we can apply to our season this year after taking all of 2022 off. So I'm hoping that, my return to stage this year goes smoothly, hopefully.
Okay. So let's talk about taking all of last year off. Did you get healed up from your knee? And then you kind of mentioned overall size earlier as you were sharing some things with us. So healing up your knee, and then was it just really putting on more size? Was that like the sole focus of last year? And how did that off season go? What type of progress do you feel, Emily, like you made?
Yeah, so as far as my knee goes, I saw Dr. Prisk, who is a doctor in Pittsburgh. He's also an IFBB judge. He was amazing. He got me in the next day, took care of me. We actually just did a cortisone shot in the knee, and luckily it hasn't been an issue since. We did alter my training a little bit, pulling back on some of the free bar motions, movements that we do to kind of play it a little bit more safe. So knock on wood, that hasn't been an issue since. But taking this whole year off, it was my first time taking a year off since I started competing. So way back in 2015, when I did that show at Slippery Rock, every year since I have dieted and kind of put my body through the ringer. So it was nice to take a year and have a little bit more consistency with my body. We got my food the highest it's ever been, not only day-to-day eating between like my 6 meals, but we also had on top of that free meals, which for me, I don't really get free meals often. So it was definitely a weird experience for Derek to be like, all right, this week I want you to take 3 free meals on top of all of this food that you're already eating. So for me, bodybuilding was always I wouldn't say a Band-Aid, but I really got into bodybuilding to teach me how to eat properly. I went through a rough time in college with some eating disorder tendencies of, limiting my food intake. And with my first coach, I got into bodybuilding to actually force myself to eat. So it's always kind of been an underlying fear of mine of eating too much food and eating these like fear foods, I call them. But I think this past off season, it really taught me like you can eat a lot of food and still not be growing the amount that you want to be growing. So it was a big lesson in understanding that like food is powerful. And it is probably the strongest of things in the sport that can really change your physique. A lot of people want to think it's the supplementation, but like food, I mean, man, it's wild how powerful it can get. And this was the heaviest I've gotten in off season. Probably the best conditioning I've had at that weight too. So that was really cool to see. Training was off the charts. I hit a bunch of different PRs. I had a little bit of injury stuff here, like little naggy stuff that popped up. But overall it was a good year. I enjoyed it. I missed the stage naturally. It gets a little boring in the off season because there's not quite as much going on. It's a lot more monotony and just food training, repeat. But it was needed. I mean, my body definitely, we're seeing it now as we're starting to get into a prep that it's handling food a lot better. Not so much cardio, which is awesome. Obviously you want to keep that as low as possible. So my body's it's a lot more responsive, which is good. I think that the time off from the extreme up and downs was what it needed. So I think as much as I didn't really want to take the year off, I think it was really, really beneficial.
Okay. Now I want to ask you something in terms of the psychology of this off season. So you just mentioned kind of the restricting, eating when you're in college. And I've said this a lot on the podcast because this kind of comes up often. There's a lot of ladies, there's a lot of guys, myself included, especially when I was younger, that just struggle with eating and the body image. And I think the fitness, specifically the bodybuilding, physique competitions, it attracts people like us, right? So psychologically, eating all this food, being heavier, and being in, a physique competing profession, how did you deal with that psychologically this last off season? Was it really hard? How did you kind of just like, not dull, but maybe just quiet some of those maybe past thoughts that you had about eating all that food and how it might negatively make you look?
Yeah. So I think ever since I started with bodybuilding, I wanted to show all sides of it. So like we spoke earlier about social media being like a marketing tool. For me, I've always wanted to show off season and competition season. So I think the biggest kind of hurdle is that a lot of competitors only show themselves when they're dieting down. Or when they're getting ready and they're getting leaner and things are, veins are popping out and this and that. My biggest thing was I wanted to show myself at all points of the process. So like even in off season when you're soft and squishy and things aren't as detailed, there's not as much lines showing. I didn't want to hide. And I think that was the biggest thing that helped me get through the fear of it all, was just knowing that like, this is what is supposed to be happening. Like it's normal. You're not meant to be stage lean year round. And I think if anything, I hope to be kind of an ambassador for the sport, for females especially, and that kind of realm of things is showing what is quote normal. Me when I first started in bodybuilding, looking at Instagram, there weren't many women that showed themselves in off season. So for me, I would go into an off season and get softer and gain weight. And I would be like, oh my gosh, I look so bad. This is like, everyone else looks better than me. What is happening? But it's just because of women not showing it. So I've actually had a lot of people reach out to me and say, hey, thank you for posting your check-in pictures when you're, middle of your off season. And thank you for saying that like you feel uncomfortable too, because that's how I felt. And I think it's an area that doesn't get spoken about a lot in the sport, just because people want to show the highs and the highlight reels. And when they look their best, naturally, we all want to, be confident in how we look. But it's just not going to happen. You have to have off seasons. You have to gain weight. The scale's going to go up. You're going to eat more food. You're going to, you should be eating to the point where you're like, you're kind of uncomfortable. You're kind of full. Like, it's part of the process. And being in a sport of extremes, it's something you have to learn to deal with. And for me, like the mental and the psychological aspect of it, I just keep telling myself, like, do what you need to do to get to where you want to be. So like, obviously if I want to gain size, I'm going to have to eat, I'm going to have to gain weight. It's just the way it's going to go. And I think having a strong support system too, fellow competitors, my coach, people that I can kind of reach out to and say, hey, I feel like a water buffalo today. I feel like a blob. And, for them to be like, oh my gosh, no, you don't, like, relax. It's just in your head. You're just overanalyzing everything. That has been, really important, is just have a strong support system in place to be there when you do hit those moments where you're like, I'm freaking out. I feel so fat. I don't like this. I feel so uncomfortable in my body. So I would say, like, to have maybe fellow competitors, that someone who can relate to you, to have someone to kind of reach out to in those moments.
Excellent advice, Emily. Okay, we're going to start finishing up. I want to ask you though, you said you're kind of just starting to maybe step into a prep for 2023. Do you and Derek, I'm assuming you probably do, you guys kind of have some competitions or thoughts about when we're going to be able to see you back on stage this year?
Yeah, so I would say sooner than later. Derek's game plan was he wanted to get out in the beginning kind of shows of the year. Since we did sit last year out, we wanted to get things rolling right off the bat. So here we kind of started pulling back a little bit at the end of the year in December, right after the holidays. We kind of made another little push here, just testing out, seeing where my body is, how it's responding to everything. So far so good. We're smooth sailing. knock on wood, hopefully we stay healthy, but we're looking here hopefully in the late spring, early summer. So I think probably like April, May, June, depending on, how everything plays out. We haven't fully 100% committed to anything yet. But I would say that's like the timeline where you can expect to see me out there.
Okay. What are, I know the Omaha Pro is somewhere in that realm. What are some of the other competitions in the early spring? You don't have to tell us which ones you're thinking about doing, but which ones are there for the ladies?
Yeah, so early on, right off the bat, there's the Pittsburgh, which is in May. One of the bigger shows, actually Women's Physique. This is only the second year it's been there. And for me being local, that's definitely on our radar. Right after that, there's also, I think, the New York Pro, which is another very prestigious. It's on my bucket list, which would be a really cool show to do. I know into the summer, there's the Chicago Pro again, which would be another cool show. So yeah, there's a good handful. But I know it goes on into the summer, like June, July, and August are like slammed with shows. So every couple of weeks there's another one. But I'm open. I told Derek, wherever you want to go, I'm cool with it. Let's travel. I love seeing different cities. Competing is kind of my way of exploring and getting some cool experiences. So I have my passport, and I told him I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
That's cool. Do you know when the Omaha Pro is?
Oh,
Yeah,
I think it's in June.
okay.
I want to say,
because I'm in Iowa, and that's obviously Omaha, Nebraska, and it's 2 hours away. So I was going to say, if you're going to compete in that one, I might have to drive down, and there might be some other athletes that I've had on the podcast that'll be competing at that, and I would love to just connect with you guys, in person and things like that. But we'll have to touch base maybe when we get closer to that point.
Yeah, 100%. I'd be down with that. Hopefully, another one of my favorite competitors, Brooke Walker, she's from that area too, which would be awesome to meet her. I actually got to briefly meet her at the Olympia in 2021, and she's awesome. A very, very strong woman, kind of figure in our division.
Yeah. She Brooke just came on the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and I know I've seen her posting on her Instagram stories a lot about the Omaha Pro, because she's actually, I can't remember exactly where she lives. She lives like maybe in Arkansas, but that's kind of in the Midwest NPC, and I think she's kind of a part of that. So I've been seeing her post about the Omaha Pro and some of those Midwest competitions. But yeah, Brooke is she's a special girl. I had a great time chatting with her. Okay, Emily, I want to ask you, kind of just wrapping things up, what's your ultimate competitive bodybuilding goal for yourself?
I would say short term is to requalify and get back to an Olympia. That would be awesome. Long term, Derek and I have had discussions about this. And for me, I want to create kind of that like aspect of a competitor where you see them on the roster for a show, and in your mind you're like, oh, she's going to be tough to beat. That's kind of like my ultimate goal, is to create kind of that like career kind of status of being one of those competitors that's like a problem. That they're going into a show and they're top three for sure. They're going to be the one to beat. So that's kind of my goal, is to hopefully stack up a good amount of pro wins. I think for me, like goal wise, I would love to be top 10 at the Olympia. That would be an amazing kind of experience to add on to the resume there. But definitely, like if I can get a couple more pro wins under my belt, that would be my ideal kind of a career in the sport.
Nice. Okay, a couple fun questions here, and then we'll wrap it up. You mentioned having some free, a few free meals each week during your last off season. Now, do you kind of take that free meal and run with it, or do you kind of stick to just the boring bodybuilding stuff and just maybe increase? What's a free meal look like for you, Emily?
So when we first started, my free meals were very, very basic. So it was either like burger and fry, steak and potato, sushi. And I think in my mind, that was like safe foods. Like I could eat that and know like, okay, Derek told me to eat this, so it's good. I won't get fat. Like this is safe. But this past year with these free meals in off season, we're so far out from a show. And to give yourself a little bit of like a mental break, Derek would be like, okay, I want you to take 2 free meals and whatever you want. And of course, you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't had pasta in forever. I haven't had this. Like, so for me, my free meal, actually, I prefer like homemade stuff. So this year I did a lot of breakfasts. I would make like omelets with all of the mix-ins that I wanted. I would make pancakes, put chocolate chips in them because, hey, why not? We're in off season. So that's probably my favorite, is like a homemade breakfast free meal of whatever you're craving at the time.
Okay. So are you an IHOP girl then, or do you have another breakfast restaurant you like?
I had IHOP this past year and I was really disappointed with it. I don't know if it was just like the place I went to or what, but here in Pittsburgh, for breakfast, I would definitely recommend Pamela's Diner. They're like a hometown traditional place to go. They have amazing food. It's all like homemade, made with love, which meaning like a ton of butter and fat, which is awesome.
Yeah. Okay, another kind of a fun question. Do you have any gym pet peeves?
Oh, plenty. I think that my biggest one is just like not respecting the facility. So if you take stuff out, put it away, re-rack your weights, put the attachments back on the trees where they belong. That's my biggest thing. Because when I go in to do my workout, like I don't want to be cleaning up before I even get started. So that's my biggest pet peeve. And then on top of that, it's just like attitude, gym attitude. We're all there trying to be better. I don't care if you're the top level pro athlete. I don't care if you're first time stepping in a gym. We're all there. We're all equals. We're all paying the same membership price, and we all get the same access to the equipment. So I think just like gym etiquette, as far as like being kind and respectful and sharing with others, is big, and I kind of try to hopefully enforce it in the gym I go to here in Pittsburgh.
Okay. And then kind of the last question, just overall, outside of the coaching and the bodybuilding and all the fitness stuff, what does Emily like to do kind of for fun, or what do you do just to kind of get away from all the fitness stuff?
Oh, I'm pretty boring. Like my idea of a fun off day is maybe a walk outside in some hopefully good weather we have here. I like watching movies. I'm a big dog person, so that's always fun. Like if I can, get around. My family still has our little family, our pet dog there. So most of the time I'll go over there and visit and spend time there. But yeah, I mean, my fun ideas are relaxing. I'm not big on like nightlife. I'm kind of a grandma. I like to go to bed early. So my idea of like fun is like a chill night at home, watching a good movie.
You sound like you sound like a bodybuilder, Emily. people ask me, different clients and stuff, and I train a lot of youth. I'm really passionate about like teaching kids how to lift weights and do it properly. And so, I'll have young kids be like, well, what do you watch on TV, or what do you watch on YouTube, or what do you do for fun? I'm like, well, on YouTube, I watch people working out. And I was like, I don't have a TV, and I just, when you kind of in the fitness business or industry, it's kind of all consuming, for better or for worse. But I think a lot of us, especially those of us that played sports when we were younger, like it's kind of what we know. It's what makes us comfortable. It's what we like. And we kind of find our fun within that. Is that kind of fair to say?
Yeah, 100%. And I think too, like when you're trying to live a healthier lifestyle too, like your idea of fun is just like downtime. Yeah. I don't know, like a lot of the times when the weekend rolls around and people are like, oh, what are you doing this weekend for fun? Or, what are you doing Saturday night? And I'm like, I'm actually getting in my pajamas at like 7 and just like sitting on the couch. Like that's going to be fun for me.
Yeah. And then all the weird looks and the weird comments come, but that's okay. I think that's why we are attracted to bodybuilding, because it's not normal. It's different. Right. So we're going to end it right there, Emily. Before I do a really quick outro and I let you go, why don't you give us any final thoughts, any final words that you might have, any shout outs, and then why don't you please give us your Instagram, and then also in terms of like the posing coaching and connecting with you, is Instagram the best way? So I'll turn it over to you, then I'll do a quick outro. So platform's yours.
Yeah. So again, thank you very much for having me on your podcast. I think it's awesome getting a chance to kind of for people to get to know us a little bit more besides like just what we look like. So thank you again for your time. I do want to give a shout out not only to my team, my coach and everything, but my parents, because they were really mad at me the last time I was on a podcast. I didn't shout them out. So Mom and Dad, thank you for everything, and everything that you will do in the future for me to support me and love me the best that you can. And then on top of that, my Instagram is actually mshub_IFBB Pro. I would say Instagram is the easiest way to reach out to me, connect to me. My email's on there, so you can shoot me an email there, my coaching email there. But other than that, yeah, I'm really excited to be back and in the swing of things and getting back on stage this year. So it should be a good year here.
Excellent. All right, Emily, really appreciate it. Okay.
Thank you so much.
Yep, you're welcome. All of you who are tuning into another episode of Behind the Muscle podcast, I just want to say thank you so very much. If you guys have not done so already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button in regards to Behind the Muscle podcast on YouTube. And then also please take this episode with Emily, share it on your Instagram stories. Make sure you tag Emily, tag Behind the Muscle podcast, so that we know that you listened specifically to this episode and found great value in it, in which I know you did. And then finally, I will leave you all with this. Remember, behind the muscle, there's always a story. We'll catch you guys later.